And Nevada, bringing conditions likely to make travel impossible, perhaps for days, and potentially stranding people who have not heeded urgent warnings. 5 to 10 feet of snow forecasted to fall across the Sierra Nevada mountains over the next few days, driven by 50 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts. Snowfall rates up to 4 inches an hour. The National Weather Service tonight warning whiteout conditions are expected, making travel treacherous and potentially life-threatening. And in this volatile season of extremes, 1,400 miles away in Texas, a jarring contrast tonight. Wildfires taking their own brutal toll. But let's start with that monster winter blast in the west. Steve Patterson is there for us. Steve, what are you seeing?
Lester, this is it. The storm is here and we are in it. Authorities say the window to travel is now over. It is now very much time to hunker down as these blizzard-like conditions are expected to last like this or far worse for days.
Tonight, relentless waves of wind-whipped snow pounding the California Sierras.
Oh, God.
The National Weather Service issuing a rare blizzard warning for the region with life-threatening blankets of blinding whiteouts on the roads.
Oh, God.
Major interstates already shutting down after accidents like this big rig flip near Truckee.
If you don't have to travel, do not. Skiing, snowboarding, sledding is not that important. Your lives are way more important, and we want you to be safe on the road.
Areas from
Absolutely.
Yosemite to Lake Tahoe can see from anywhere from 5 to 10 feet of snow, with more than 12 feet of snow, gusting at over 100 miles per hour in the mountains.
God.
It's just going to be the storm of the winter so far, so we're just going to hunker down.
There's no fun for anybody. You can't sleigh ride, you can't ski.
Several ski resorts now shutting down lifts. Yosemite National Park closed until at least Sunday. Local residents preparing to be snowed in for days.
Ice melt, generators, lanterns, flashlights, batteries, anything that you can think of that somebody would need for a power outage or a severe storm, and they are coming in for it.
At its worst, officials warn of 2 to 4 inches of snow every hour for days.
This one is a 96-hour cycle, so it's really going to affect us in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Tonight, an entire region bracing for impact. Steve Patterson, NBC News, Truckee, California.
Well, that needed moisture.
I'm Morgan Chesky in a scorched Texas panhandle, where heartbreak stretches
Look at
beyond
this.
the burn scars.
We had to watch from 3 miles away as our neighborhood burned.
So sad.
It was pretty awful.
For a closer look, we joined rancher Jason Abraham, flying over hard-hit Canadian.
I know the people that live there, and I know the people that lived there before these people did.
The town of 2000 now facing a recovery that could take years. There's nothing you can do with a fire like this.
I can't believe we didn't kill a whole bunch of people.
Authorities say the fires are responsible for 2 deaths and destroyed at least 400 buildings.
Oh,
That we
man.
face enormous potential fire dangers as we head into this weekend. No one can let down their guard.
As Tuesday's inferno moved in, Steve Rader captured this video, determined to save his home. Today he returned to a total loss.
Man.
What finally made you decide to get out of here?
Yeah, I was going to die if I didn't walk away.
Yeah. You believe that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a very deadly situation.
Tonight, with fires far from contained, crews on the Texas prairie fighting on. Morgan Chesky, NBC News.
It was an amazing scene that played out on a bridge today in Louisville, Kentucky, where a semi-truck crashed and then dangled over the Ohio River. A daring fire department rescuer was suspended in midair to save the driver. Here's Jesse Kirsch.
Oh, this will be something.
A stunning scene unfolding on a Louisville bridge. A firefighter
Look like something out of Hollywood.
rappelling down to reach a driver stranded inside this semi-tractor trailer as the truck's cab dangles above the water. First responders worried it could fall at any moment.
This is very much a worst-case scenario, kind of a crazy thing that you don't expect to actually have to do until you show up.
Officials say around 12 p.m., the truck and 3 other vehicles were involved in a collision. The truck careening off the roadway with its female driver still in the cab.
Wow.
The fire department says she was shaken, but still talking with the rescue team.
We're very concerned with the stabilization there to make sure that our people are safe. Obviously, we are willing to risk a lot to save a lot. And so, yes, we will absolutely take that risk to get her out
Firefighter Bryce Carden
Look at
went
that.
over the edge to make the rescue.
Look at
She was
that.
just praying. She was praying a lot. So, and I prayed with her. She was super calm, collected, and helped me do what I needed to do to get her to safety, essentially. And it all worked out for the best. And we'll go back
Absolutely.
to quarters and get ready to do it again if we have to.
About 40 minutes after the daring rescue began, the driver was out of harm's way, was alert,
40
and was
minutes.
taken to the
That's a good
hospital
time.
with what police believe are non-life-threatening injuries. Authorities say 2 people from one of the other vehicles involved
Look how
do
it bent
have
that
injuries
beam.
that appear to be life-threatening.
Tonight, police still have not said what led to the collision which started this incident, but we are learning more about the semi-truck involved. It features the logo of food service company Cisco, which says its trucks do not transport hazardous materials. Lester?
Incredible heroism there, Jesse. Thank you. Also this evening, the U.S. about to become more directly involved in the relief effort in Gaza with American airdrops of food about to begin. We get the latest from Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander.
Facing pressure to ease the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, President Biden tonight announced a dramatic new step. Within days, the U.S. will start providing Palestinians desperately needed aid from the air.
We're going to join with our friends in Jordan and others in providing airdrops of additional food and supplies into Ukraine.
The White House later said the president misspoke and was referring to Gaza. His announcement, an acknowledgement that aid trucks are not getting into Gaza quickly enough, though efforts to expedite those convoys remain ongoing. The first airdrops, aides say, will be ready-made meals, and that Israel is supportive of the American efforts. The president tonight also said the U.S. is exploring how to deliver aid by sea. Earlier this week, top UN officials warned a quarter of Gaza's population, more than 500,000 people, are near famine. Tonight's move means U.S. aircraft will soon be flying above a war zone.
This is a tough military mission to do because so many parameters have to be exactly right.
It comes just 24 hours after Palestinian witnesses in Gaza say Israeli troops opened fire on civilians gathering to receive aid off trucks. But the Israeli military says many were trampled in a stampede, and others were shot when they threatened Israeli soldiers.
Innocent people got caught in a terrible war, unable to feed their families, and you saw the response when they tried to get aid in. And we need to do more, and the United States will do more.
And Peter, the demand is so great there. These airdrops could only make just a dent.
Yeah, that's right, Lester. The White House acknowledges that airdrops themselves are not the most efficient or cost-effective way to get food and medical supplies in. Trucks, obviously, a much better way to do this. But White House officials, Lester, say it is worth it to get that additional aid in faster.
All right, Peter Alexander with us tonight. Thank you. Just in this evening, the debris from another possible large balloon found off the coast of Alaska. The FBI says it was found by a commercial fishing vessel and that it's working with its partners to recover it. A federal law enforcement source says there are no early indications that it was a spy balloon like the one from China that crossed into the U.S. last year. In Moscow, heartbreak and defiance today as thousands gathered for the funeral of Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader who died in Russian custody 2 weeks ago. Keir Simmons with that story.
In an open casket, the body of Alexei Navalny, President Putin's most famous opponent. His family had struggled to find a church willing to hold the service. But outside, on the streets of Moscow, thousands of his supporters threw flowers as the cortege passed by, each one risking their freedom to be there. They chanted his name, openly calling Putin a murderer, and cried, "We will not forgive you." Despite the heavy presence of Russian riot police and dozens of arrests across the country. Russian prison authorities say Navalny collapsed while taking a walk. His wife, Yulia, says he was poisoned. She didn't attend the funeral over safety concerns. Instead, she posted a social media message. "Thank you for 26 years of absolute happiness. I will try to make you proud of me up there." As Navalny's mother left the church, people kissed her and told her thank you for your son. And at the cemetery, she kissed him one last time, helping cover his head. A moment of closure. But as dark fell, Navalny's mother was still there. And so were many thousands of ordinary Russians. Look how united we are, this woman says. If the Kremlin hoped Navalny's death would silence his message, tonight his supporters have replied with one voice. Meanwhile, President Putin's spokesman today told journalists he had nothing to say to the Navalny family. Lester?
All right, Keir Simmons, thank you. Here at home, Republican frontrunner Donald Trump is back in a federal courtroom for a hearing that will determine when the trial over his handling of classified documents will begin. Meanwhile, his last remaining Republican primary opponent is speaking out. Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker joins me. Kristen, Nikki Haley had some pretty sharp words for Mr. Trump.
Lester, that's right. And this is all happening as there are new developments in those legal battles surrounding the former president. The key question is how many potential criminal trials could he face before the election? Nikki Haley told me she thinks they should all begin before November. And today I asked her about what she thinks Mr. Trump might do if he's reelected. Do you think Donald Trump would follow the Constitution if he were elected to a second term?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you always want to think someone will, but I don't know. You know, when you go in and you talk about revenge, when you go and you talk about, vindication, when you go and you talk about what does that mean? Like, I don't know what that means. And only he can answer for that.
Now, the former president was back in a Florida courtroom today where the special counsel in the classified documents case is asking for that trial to begin in July, the week before the Republican convention. Mr. Trump's lawyers are arguing for it to begin after the election or in August. And we just learned today a judge in Atlanta will rule in 2 weeks over the misconduct allegations against the Fulton County DA, who is also pursuing an election interference case against Mr. Trump. Lester.
All right, Kristen, thank you. Let me remind our viewers that more of Kristen's interview can be seen Sunday on Meet the Press. In 60 seconds, the mother of 5 who vanished in Connecticut and a dramatic verdict in court today, right after this.
Let's go forward here.
Dennis Murphy.
Tonight, more than 4 years after Jennifer Dulos went missing, her family says there is finally accountability.
Guilty.
Her estranged husband's girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, overcome with emotion after a Connecticut jury found her guilty on multiple charges, including conspiring to murder Dulos. Troconis' family calling the outcome a tremendous injustice.
My sister's innocent. This is wrong. This wasn't a fair trial from day one.
Jennifer Dulos went missing back in May of 2019 after dropping her kids off at school. Her body was never found. Police quickly honed in on her estranged husband, Fotis. The couple was going through a bitter divorce and custody battle over their 5 children. Authorities say this video shows Fotis Dulos dumping trash bags containing items belonging to Jennifer as Troconis sits in the trunk. I spoke with Dulos in 2019. Did you have anything to do with Jennifer's disappearance?
I did not, but I'd like to leave it at that.
In 2020, he was charged with murder and kidnapping. Weeks later, he died by suicide, continuing to proclaim his innocence and Troconis's in a note he left behind. In the 7-week trial, prosecutors arguing Michelle was involved from start to finish.
Look at what Michelle Troconis did for acts of behavior before and after the murder.
The defense said she had nothing to do with Dulos' death.
Michelle is not the remaining half of a scheming plot.
As the jury deliberated, I sat down with some of Jennifer's closest friends. Without being prying, but I think everybody would like to know how the children are doing in general.
They're very impressive young people, and they are going to do amazing things.
Tonight, Jennifer Dulos' family thanking the jury and saying her grace, goodness, and light live on through her children. Dennis Murphy, NBC News, Stamford, Connecticut.
You can see much more on the case tonight in a 2-hour Dateline here on NBC starting at 9 Eastern. Ahead, the nation's biggest pharmacies making a major announcement about access to the abortion pill, plus why applying to college and financial aid has become such a headache to so many families.
Weird.
#1 source for impactful local news and community updates. Our team is here for you, delivering relevant, reliable information that matters to you. From breaking news and local updates to in-depth coverage on the topics that matter most, we've got you covered. Stay informed and stay connected with our community. WPSD Local 6. Watch us weekdays at
The country's two biggest drugstore chains announced today they're certified to dispense abortion pills. CVS and Walgreens said they'll be providing mifepristone in the coming weeks in states where abortion pills are legal. It will require a prescription. Medication abortions account for more than half of all abortions in the U.S. Now to our series, Kids Under Pressure. With spring fast approaching, millions of high school seniors will soon be making decisions about college. But for many, glitches with a key financial aid form are causing chaos. Rahima Ellis reports.
Tori Bishop is focusing on her future and going to college, and she's got several offers.
It's smaller.
But this Massachusetts high school senior hasn't decided yet because a critical piece of the admissions package is missing, the financial aid offer.
Stressing me out a little.
It's stressing her mom out, too.
We're middle class, hardworking people, and we do our best to try to provide for our kids, but college is expensive, so we do need help with that.
College financial aid packages are based on a federal form, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, commonly known as FAFSA. Last year, the government revised the complex form to make it easier to fill out, dramatically slashing the number of questions from 103 down to about 20, and expanding FAFSA eligibility.
What they were trying to do was very much appreciated.
But unexpected technical glitches and form errors had a crippling effect, preventing some students from accessing the form and delaying when colleges received FAFSA information. That means some schools may not get their financial aid offers to students until mid-April, just 2 weeks before the standard May 1 decision deadline. How would you describe this impact?
I think it's catastrophic. Most students around the country this year haven't submitted a FAFSA form yet.
Education Secretary Miguel Cardona says his office is spending $50 million to help fix the problems. What would you say to those students who are feeling frustrated by the process?
I would say to them, we hear you. We're working around the clock to make it better for you.
Many colleges are pushing back their decision deadline beyond May 1st, giving students more time to consider their options. But for Tori, that just means more uncertainty.
I can't make decisions about what school I'm going to until we figure out the money.
And when that happens, is out of their control. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, Wakefield, Massachusetts.
When we come back, Caitlin Clark has already made history. Now she's poised to do it again and change basketball forever in the process.
The other day, she found it. The feet.
How's anybody going to change basketball forever? Let's see.
History. Here's Stephanie.
Back up a little bit. Right there.
21 tornado. And we're tracking warmer weather on the way.
When that could lead to storm chances ahead at 6.
Finally tonight, she has one more regular season game before turning pro. And when Caitlin Clark takes the court this weekend, she'll be just 18 points away from history. Here's Stephanie Gosk.
Iowa Hawkeye Caitlin Clark is scooping up basketball records this season like she sinks three-pointers. She's the NCAA women's all-time scorer, besting Kelsey Plum. How will she go for history? The all-time women's collegiate scorer, ousting Lynette Woodard. Now the college senior is on the brink of breaking the NCAA scoring record for men or women. Pistol Pete Maravich set that one more than 50 years ago.
Yeah, I think it shows how amazing women's basketball is across the board.
Clark is only 18 points away. Averaging more than 30 a game, the record is probably hers on Sunday against Ohio State. A courtside seat is selling for thousands of dollars.
It's just amazing historical stuff. Caitlin Clark has her sights on history.
Zora Stevenson is an announcer for NBC Sports.
Does the excitement expand well beyond just women's basketball?
You had Patrick Mahomes talking about the impact of Caitlin Clark. Athletes all over and people that don't necessarily
watch sports are now in tune to Caitlin Clark.
Wow.
Clark will play in the WNBA next year. It's no mystery who's going first in the draft. And she will bring along a legion of new fans.
I look for threes and it inspires me to make threes.
On Sunday, her last regular season game as a Hawkeye, Clark will likely break another record. But in her time in Iowa, she's transformed the game. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
And that's Nightly News for this Friday. You can catch a new episode of Nightly News Kids Edition tomorrow morning on NBC. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
Hit the wrong button.
And even this pathetically toothless resolution gets only 6 Republican co-sponsors.
Innuendo or gossip. He's being incredibly careful, and he's doing exactly what he needs to do to make sure that whichever way he goes on this is that his order actually will be defensible, because at the end of the day, he is there to make a decision with respect to the integrity of the judicial system and the court. And I think he's going to make the right decision. And right now, looking at the evidence that's come in, I don't think that there is any evidence that actually would justify the disqualification of the DA's office right now.
Jen Jordan, thanks very much. Joe Jackson as well. Coming up, a really remarkable sight. Thousands lining streets in Moscow to pay their last respects to Alexei Navalny, the Russian dissident. One mourner compared to Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King Jr. Matthew Chance was there. He joins us next from Russia. And Russia for Democracy leader Gary Kasparov joins us in his first television interview since Navalny's death.
Like I have put out in some of my other material, what the old USSR President Putin government over in Russia did not put into the equation is that if you get to looking at the majority of the people has got handheld devices with cameras taking pictures. That way the rest of the world will know just what kind of a monster that even Ronald Reagan pegged 30 plus years ago by telling the Russian government that they was, in fact, a evil empire. 30 plus years ago, the Putin government could have ordered for an onslaught to go in there and kill just about everybody in the streets that's basically glorifying this guy. That needs to be glorified as far as I'm concerned. He needs to be glorified. 30, 35 years ago, they'd have went in and massacred him. And we may have heard about it later to some degree, but we wouldn't have known if it was the truth or if it was just some more propaganda. These are the things that Putin did not put into the equation properly whenever he decided that he was going to attack Ukraine and sworn that he was going to have them defeated and have them basically bowed down to him in less than, I think, 72 hours at the original assessment. These evil demonic dictators, and it doesn't matter if it's in a big country or in Venezuela or Colombia or wherever, they're going to be found out. They're going to be sought out. AI will seek these people out, and they will have to give an account for their actions in their own land with their own people. If not, international court will intercede and do their jobs for them. Anybody that thinks that they can pull the wool over people's eyes today, with so many people having gizmos and gadgets, cameras that can broadcast events going on all over the world. Anybody that didn't take that into the equation was either very, very naive or they didn't care. Well, now, since this man has died, you don't see no onslaught. You don't see them mowing down their citizens. Once more, Putin is being embarrassed. He is being made fun of. And if their parliament thinks anything at all of their government, they will request for him to resign immediately. Immediately, because of this action from within. Because this is internal. This isn't something that's going on over in America like they always want to point their finger towards. They always want to say, well, it's the Western world's fault. It's the Western world's fault. This isn't no one's fault but the internal affairs of their own people finally gathering up enough backbone to stand up and say, you know what? You go ahead and kill us. You go ahead and kill us, oh great master, because we're going to stand up for what this man believed in. And if you don't like it, tough, you know what? Just like the people over in Ukraine that I admire so admirably because of what they're doing, standing up for their freedom. And to me, this is just my opinion now. You can take it for what it's worth. To me, if the American people don't stand in behind the Ukrainian people on this, it's going to be another black eye, another embarrassment to our United States government in not fulfilling its obligations and its duties that it has made to its allies all over the world. And what the allies all over the world are going to start looking at, if that be the case, they're going to say, well, if they didn't stand behind Ukraine, do you think they're going to stand behind us? If they didn't stand with Ukraine after them promising and bringing him in front of their Congress and bringing him in front of the Canadians' Congress and their Parliament, do you really think that they're going to stand with us if we fall? It is essential, if we're going to maintain strength through peace, that we do it now more so than ever before, pertaining to our word, because if our word ain't no good, we're no good. I learned that real quick in the prison systems. Once you get into the prison systems, they'll figure out if you're a con, they'll figure out if you're a smirk, they'll figure out if you're just a low life, no good for nothing. You know what? They'll figure out if your word is good. And it don't take them weeks. It don't take them days ordinarily. More than likely, it's going to take just a few hours, and they're going to be able to identify who walked into that room with them. Sometimes it may take a day or so, depending upon how slick and sly that the person is and how quiet that they are. But ordinarily, it don't take long for somebody to figure somebody out towards identifying, God, this is a low life, no good for nothing BS. He raped this child down the road, and now he's in here with us. What are we going to do about it, guys? And that's whenever basically street justice comes into play. Or it used to. I don't know that it does anymore because there's so many people in there towards pedophile sexual misbehavior ever since the Catholic Church was exposed pertaining to their behaviors, and Michael Jackson and other known people that have been brought out before the people. But it used to be at one time, 35, 40 years ago, whenever society was still in a decent form in lots of different ways, that if you committed a sexual crime, or if you was a man and you committed a crime against a woman, that was like the cardinal sin, the sin of all sins. You just didn't do that. And if you did, you suffered the consequences in behind the jail cells. Today, we no longer see as much of that as what we used to. I'm not saying that it don't occur, but we don't see as much of it as what we did at one time see over here in America. Now what goes on in Turkey, what goes on in Russia, what goes on in China, what goes on in Venezuela and Colombia and all these other different countries, big or little, I don't know. I don't know about those countries. I can't speak for those countries, but I can speak for our country, that at one time it used to be this way. And I can speak of the fact that whenever Putin done what he done pertaining to his parliament, they did not put into the proper equation that we now live in an open, atmospheric, media type social stance, that basically everybody knows what everybody else is saying and what everybody else is thinking. I mean, I guarantee you, whenever I post something to as many people as I post out there, the numbers on my telephone may say, well, it's only this amount of people. But in reality, it could actually be 10 times that. Because there's ways that they can throw stuff over and then record it and then follow through without it ever even being caught by AI towards it being checked or recognized towards another viewer or towards another supporter or follower. I'm just saying that if these dictators want to go in and massacre their people and rawhide their people like they did thousands of years ago, you keep in mind that we live in a society that now has cameras everywhere, and they will be discovered. It ain't like back in the old days whenever you could do something and cover it all up. Those days is over. Those days are over, and thank God they are, because the only thing that's going to save society in lots of ways is AI, and the thing that's going to destroy society is AI. So you can look at AI in two different directions, in two different perspectives. Is AI going to actually enhance and save humanity, or is AI going to destroy humanity? I'm optimistic, and I want to think that it will enhance humanity to the degree that it will make so many millions of more people's lives so much more better. Does that mean that people are going to have to walk the line? Absolutely. And it doesn't matter if it's American police officers. It doesn't matter if it's our American military. It doesn't matter if it's a evil, demonic, communism-controlled country. Does that mean that now people are going to have to be more apt of walking the line? Yes, they are. Or they're going to be discovered. And I think that was one of the main things that upset so many people whenever I moved back here in 2014. First of all, whenever I moved back here in 2014, I didn't realize that they had basically marketed what that they was thinking and what that they was going to do to me if I did ever come back. And I didn't discover that until like a couple years into all the persecution, especially whenever I went down to Miss Coble's house right down the road here, that had so many girls raised up right down the road here. And I went down there with tomatoes and sweet corn and, I don't know, cucumbers and 2 or 3 other things. And I was just being polite, the way that I know that my dad would be if he had extra stuff that he wasn't going to use. Rather than waste it, give it away. And man, did she ever frown up against me and say, you leave. You don't come back here. And that was a woman that I've always looked up to, not just as a friend, but basically as a family member. May have been a distant family member, but I always looked up to a lot of these people around here. Miss Lenore Willis up the road here. These people turned their back on me, and they wouldn't pour you know what on me if they seen me out in the road on fire. So something had to occur during those years that I worked in Milan for 5 years. I worked in Jackson for 10 years, and then I was out on the road for another 9 years. Something occurred during the time that I was gone, and that was the devil put a lot of fake, phony, false images in people's heads and in people's minds that I was this way, that way, and that way. And they bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. Just like my son. He'd rather call his dad a liar and look up to his grandpa, even though his grandpa had a major mental illness, not counting that he was physically abusive and verbally abusive. He'd rather degrade his dad and hold up somebody like his grandpa than he would to actually look at the realization of real. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't care about his grandfather, because everybody should care about their kinfolks. But you gotta if you're gonna be a straight shooter, you gotta call it like it is. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, because I've made lots of mistakes, and I still make mistakes. But I feel like that I've finally come around to the point that now I can see how people have fumigated a movement against me, that whenever I come back here, total hell busted loose in our lives. And what really gets under their collar towards putting a burr under their saddle is the fact that AI is out there, and guess what? Dennis is using it. Dennis is using it. Dennis is telling his story. Dennis is telling people what other people either have or have not done. And it's just irritating so many people to death, just like what's going on right now in Russia. I guarantee you, Putin and all those rich oligarchs, they're basically they're gnawing at their bit. They're gnawing at the bit right now because of AI. Because now AI is bringing it to the forefront towards now everybody sees your dirty laundry, Mr. Putin. Everybody now knows how that you truly are what Ronald Reagan said that you was 30 plus years ago towards being a evil empire. And until we see sustaining movements like we're seeing right now from the inside towards it being internal, of the people standing up against their leadership, we're not never going to see peace in utopia. We're not never going to see a true, authentic Holy Ghost revival that will revolutionize the world. We're not never going to see that until the people stand up. I was so let down, and you probably heard this out of some of my other material that I put out before. I was so let down by the Afghanistan women and men that basically did not make their stance at the time, that if they did, America would have been right there towards backing them up. But because they just basically laid down and surrendered, we know what Putin has said about that. That if a group of people ain't willing to fight for themselves, we're not going to fight for them. Well, now the shoe's on the other foot. Now the people are willing to fight for themselves, pertaining to the Ukrainians. And now are we not going to stand with them? That will be a black eye in the American government that will never go away if they do not stand with the Ukrainian people. And I know we're trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. You've heard me mention this before. But that does not dissolve the fact of right's right and wrong's wrong, and two wrongs does not make a right. We have been cast into a setting right now, just as it talks about in the first 4 chapters of Revelations, that I will not put upon to thee none other burden, hold fast till I come. That's God speaking to the 7 churches. If he's speaking to the 7 churches, he's also speaking to all the continents. If he's speaking to all the continents, he's also speaking to, 197 different nations and countries in the world. For I will not put upon to thee none other burden, hold fast till I come. He's saying that again and again and again and again. Okay? What is a burden? A burden is something that you rather not have to be dealing with, but you're going to have to deal with it anyway. It's a burden. A lot of people has lots of different burdens. You can have a health burden. You can have a financial burden. You can have a work ethic burden. You can have all kinds of different burdens. Christ is saying, be faithful. Won't put upon to thee none other burden. Hold fast till he comes. until we recognize those words towards them being not 2,000 years ago, not 1,000 years ago, but as of today. As of today, the Holy Spirit is saying, I will not put upon to thee none other burden, hold fast till I come. That's not just talking to one particular sector of people. That's talking to basically all the people throughout all the continents of the world. And there's no doubt America, because of various corrupt politicians and because the people hadn't been paying wise enough to keep things in check, now we've got a burden. We're trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, but that does not dissolve the fact that two wrongs does not make a right. Because if we don't do the proper and right thing, it will be 1,000 times worse. It'll be 1,000 times worse than it would have been if we'd have went ahead and went into the hole even that much further. And I know from an economical standpoint, a lot of people are going to say, well, that man don't know what he's talking about. That man don't know what he's talking about. Oh, yes, I do. Because if he gets away with doing what he done to Ukrainians, it's just a matter of time before he's going to think that he can get away with attacking other countries over there, Poland, Nicaragua, all them other places over there. And whenever that happens, it will actually turn into nothing but a out-and-out bloodbath that could conform our way of life in ways that would be unimaginable. Just like the fires out west over there in Texas right now. People think, well, it didn't burn but 500 homes or 1,000 homes or whatever, and it wasn't really that bad. Looking at it monetarily from that perspective, no, it may not. But what it will do, it will cause the price of hay to go up. It will cause the price of beef to go up, and it will have rippling effects all over the country pertaining to burning that much real estate. Because I guarantee you, I think it was in 2007, whenever it got so hot and dry over from Texas back this way in Tennessee, that's whenever the fires erupted in the Appalachian Mountains. That's whenever the Lake Okeechobee almost dried completely up down in Florida. That's whenever the lake almost dried completely up in Atlanta for their watering system. I guarantee you it will have a rippling effect, because whenever their hay in Texas had dried completely up, they was actually having to buy hay in other parts of the country and have it trucked in there to them. And instead of paying X amount of dollars for a big round bale of hay, they was having to pay like twice that amount. So that does have a ripple effect. Just like Putin over there doing what he's doing towards destroying, I guess, about a third of the wheat all over the world. Have you not looked lately, the price of bread? How much bread is? Let me just put it this way in what type of world that we live in. This past last winter, they had a severe bug problem down in Florida pertaining to their citrus. Have you went and bought an orange lately? If you get the nice plump ones, they're almost $1 an orange now. $1 an orange. To where pre-COVID, you could buy an orange all day long for about 25, 35 cents an orange. Not no more. Not no more. Why? Because one thing affects another thing, and that thing affects something else. And it's a ripple effect that goes on and on and on. And basically, whenever Putin started a war over there and they wound up blowing up a levee or a dam over there that caused significant flooding in the agriculture department over there, that basically just ruined not just any type of profitability coming from the Ukrainians, but it also brought a hardship a burden upon all the other people right now, that even people in Africa are probably paying 3 times as much for the same bushel of wheat as what there was before pre-COVID. So it's not just our bread on the shelves that goes up, but it's everybody's bread that goes up. And until people figure this stuff out and they stand up against these demonic rulers, we're only going to continue to keep digging ourselves deeper and deeper in a hole. I can't be more specific than that.
In a Siberian penal colony and fears his family would never see his body, thousands of mourners showed up in Moscow today for the funeral of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Shouts of no to war can be heard in a country where dissent was effectively outlawed since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. Matthew Chance was in Moscow for the funeral and he has this report.
They came in their thousands to pay their last respects. Supporters of the late Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, lining up outside the Moscow church ahead of his funeral. An act of bravery and defiance. In a country where dissent, even grief for a Kremlin critic, is rarely tolerated.
Let me ask you about the risks, because the authorities have not particularly welcomed this event. People have been detained for paying their respects to Alexei Navalny. Are you concerned about the risk you are taking?
No.
Why?
Because it's my slogan, not to think about risks. Do what you should do.
Do you hold Putin responsible for the death of Alexei Navalny?
Oh yes, definitely. No doubt. No doubt.
The Kremlin denies it. They say that they're
Boy, they said, if they ever say and agree with what they have done bad, I would be the first to applaud.
All right, well, this is the hearse, the van, which is taking the body of Alexei Navalny into this church on the outskirts of Moscow, where Russia will finally bid farewell to one of its most prominent opposition figures. You can see thousands of people from all over the region have turned out to pay their respects, clapping as his body enters for that funeral service. Are you surprised that the authorities have allowed this funeral to go ahead?
I don't know what to say about it, because I think it would be a huge mistake to not allow to do it, because there's so many people, and they came here to pay the last respect to Alexei, and Alexei, for us, and for me personally, was like, I don't know, Russian Nelson Mandela or Russian Martin Luther King. So
people are chanting his name now.
His last name.
Death may have silenced.
I guarantee you there's a whole lot more worse things than death. And if you don't believe me, ask the people over in Afghanistan, those women and children and men that are now being ruled by the Taliban. Ask them how their lives are right now, because they didn't stand up whenever they should have stood up. There's a whole lot worse things in a human being's life that can compass and excel over death. And until the people all over the world are willing to show these evil, demonic, cruel barbarians this, they're going to continue to do what they're doing and hoping that they're going to get away with it and hoping that don't nobody catch them on camera. That way it don't wind up on national news.
May have silenced Navalny, but his name is now on everyone's lips. Inside the church, the funeral service was short. No political speeches, just blessings over his open casket.
If I'm not mistaken, from the news that I caught a while ago on another channel, they was having difficulty in opening up a church for this man's last rites, which once more speaks volumes about the church people not having the backbone and standing up against the rootlessnesses of these barbarians, these oligarchs. And you would think you would think, or I would think this, that of all people that would stand up, that would have the backbone of standing up against these cruel, indifferent people, would be the Christians. Would, in fact, be those who claim to have a relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ.
Later at the cemetery, Navalny's distraught parents kissed their 47-year-old son goodbye. His wife and children, concerned for their own safety, stayed away. But so many came in their place. Outside, crowds of mourners waited patiently for a last glimpse of the cemetery gates to open and for Russian police on close guard here to finally wave them through. Right, well, this is the site inside the cemetery and the memorial to Alexei Navalny. People are coming here to lay their flowers and, as you can see, and also to file past
pay their
the
last
actual
respects.
grave site, which is there. People are picking up soil and throwing it into the ground onto the casket as a final farewell to that opposition figure. A figure who in death, as in life, is drawing thousands of Russians critical of the Kremlin onto the streets.
Matthew Chance joins us from Moscow. It's so moving, Matt.
You know, I said probably in a video a day or two before this, whenever his death was first announced, that hopefully what will occur is a movement out of his death to the point that he will become 1,000 times more powerful, similar towards other martyrs who have died standing up for a righteous cause, like Martin Luther King, like the Lord Jesus Christ, like other people that has basically been gunned down because of that in which what they believed in, that hopefully there will be a movement from the movement that will be 1,000 times more powerful than the original movement. That's all we can pray for at this point in time, and pray that God has comforted the family and friends and those around this individual's life.
Navalny's daughter, Dasha, posted this picture on Instagram of her dad, where she called him her role model, her hero, and said, "I promise you that I will live my life the way you taught me to make you proud." What else did his family have to say today? And then the people you talked to, was there concerned about speaking to you, concerned that they could be detained for being there for his funeral?
Sure.
Well, Alexei Navalny's wife, Yulia Navalnaya,
Why would they not?
Made a very poignant statement which she posted on social media as the funeral took place, basically thanking Navalny for 26 years of absolute happiness. "I don't know how to live without you," she said, "but I'll try to do so so that you up there can be happy and proud of me." And of course, Yulia Navalnaya has essentially taken on the mantle of her husband and has vowed to continue his opposition work. She's already made some very important speeches to do that. It's one of the reasons why she hasn't gone back to Russia, because there are fears for her safety. In terms of the safety of people at the funeral, yeah, I mean, there are real concerns in Russia. Hundreds of people have been arrested over the past couple of weeks just for laying flowers at makeshift memorials. But this was a moment where people felt that despite their fears, they had to come out, at least on this occasion, and be brave and say goodbye to somebody who for many Russians was a key figure, an important figure, a figure of hope.
Matthew Chance, thank you so much. Joining me now is Russian pro-democracy leader Garry Kasparov, author of Winter is Coming, Why Vladimir Putin and the Enemies of the Free World Must Be Stopped. Seeing those images today, what went through your mind?
I don't know where to start. It's probably, I can say that these people on the streets of Moscow, in a few hours, they showed more courage than Western politicians on both sides of the Atlantic for 2 years. Alexei could be probably alive if here in Washington and Brussels and Berlin, other capitals, there was a political will to stop Putin as soon as there was a chance. The Kremlin was already a year ago. But the delay with military aid, with financial package, protracted the war, and you could see Putin is happy. And the fact is that Alexei is dead. It's a message from Putin, because he failed to kill him in secret and swiftly. We know this is the poison attempt that failed, but Alexei barely made it. So he was saved by miracle and then taken to Germany, where they just recovered. And now Putin killed him slowly and in front of the whole world. And one thing we know for sure, we don't know all the details of this murder. And of course it was a murder. But we know that Putin wanted the world to know about it because they could have kept this news for themselves for a few days, for a week. They immediately informed the world, and it happened on the first day of Munich Security Conference. So that cannot be interpreted any other way, but I did it. I wanted to know that because nothing will happen to me. And of course, unfortunately, Putin was right again. President Biden 3 years ago promised devastating consequences for Russia if Navalny would come free. What's happened? They announced new sanctions. Who cares?
Do you think the sanctions have had any impact on Russia?
No, yeah, they have some impact. Clearly, you cannot say the sanctions are not working at all. But fundamentally, they just, they are not damaging the war machine. Oil, it's...
The bad thing about the sanctions, especially in those communist-controlled countries, we think that the sanctions are bad here, pertaining to the wealthy and the rich. It's got the thick bank accounts, that they're not affected as much as the poor people and working class people, in which they're not. You have to admit, they got bigger bank accounts. They can buy commercialized freezers, and man, they can stockpile and hoard stuff like you wouldn't believe. But if you think it's bad over here that way, you can only imagine what it's like over there in the people that have already been bought into the buddy-buddy system. Those are the people that are standing with Putin, and those are the people that's probably going to continue to stand with Putin, because those are the people that's got the fat checkbooks, and those are the people that are getting still probably just as much, who knows, maybe even more today than what there was before the sanctions ever started. It's the poor people, it's the working class people that always takes it on the cheek, because they don't have the stability that the wealthy people have. It's the poor people, the working class people, that always basically gets used as a whipping post. Anytime that politicians fail, what are you going to do? Go arrest all the American politicians and put them all in jail at one time? I don't think so. I mean, Donald Trump can say whatever he wants to say about draining the swamp, but it's actually an impossible task unless this country was to completely go belly up in bankruptcy. And I kind of doubt if they're going to allow for that to happen, because they're steadily printing up more and more money every day. Those printing presses in Denver, Colorado, that's printing up them nice, shiny $100 bills, they ain't slowed down. If anything, they probably speeded up. So whenever you're dealing with unjustfulness on this level, it's always the unfortunate that takes it on the cheek.
Or gas. It's these two main items of Russian budget. They are not sanctions to damage Putin's financial flow. It's oil being traded, and you look at the profits. Russia is making more money from selling oil and gas than before the war.
Later in the program,
see what I'm saying?
A piece from Nick Payton Walsh on the front lines in Ukraine.
To the big oligarchs, this has actually been a blessing to them, because now they've deviated from their old policies and their old habits and their old clientele, and now they've created new clientele, and they're actually getting more. Well, who do you think that money going to? It's going to those oligarchs. It's going to them miserable, cruel people that created this atmosphere for the small people.
In a position where Ukraine artillery, the counteroffensive, were firing, I think it was 80 shells a day. Now they can only fire about 10 because they just don't have the ammo, because Republicans in Congress won't pass anything.
You hear all time and again that the GDP of the NATO countries versus Russia, Iran, North Korea, this coalition of axis of evil is 25-1. Who cares? If Russia can fire 6-7 times more shells, I mean, North Korea than Ukraine. North Korea provided more shells to Russia than the entire Europe. You you telling me that these politicians are serious? Ukrainians are bleeding, defending their country, freedom, NATO, and also they're trying to stop this maniac. And the free world is still contemplating how we can deal with that. And Putin, look at him a couple of days ago. He delivered his speech, and he was happy. And all these talks about, let's wait for Russian people to rise. Navalny tried. He tried to show that something could be done in Russia. I'm not sure it was politically a smart move, but you cannot criticize acts of personal heroism. He paid with his life for that. And again, words, and words. The day he was murdered, he had to pay $300 billion of Russian money. It's frozen. What are you waiting for, President Biden?
This is the reason why that we call people patriarchs. And it doesn't matter if it's Jacob, it doesn't matter if it's Ezekiel, it doesn't matter if it's Moses, it doesn't matter if it's Abraham, it doesn't matter if it's Noah, it doesn't matter if it's Jesus. We call these people patriarchs. We call these people martyrs because they made an impression. Not everybody is built out of that type of material. Not everybody's built out of that material, but thank God for the ones that was, because if we didn't have patriarchs, prophets, teachers, good, strong men and women that would stand up for a righteous cause, we would still be living in the dark ages, my friends. We would literally still be living possibly in the crusading days, back in the 1400s, whenever death and destruction was looked upon in a completely different frame of mind than what it is today. I know we would be. It ain't no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If it wasn't for the movement of the patriarchs and the movement of the Lord Jesus Christ, which was more than a patriarch, he was actual God in flesh. If it wasn't for these people, and I know it's bad in a lot of the third world countries, especially the third world countries, has been inundated by drugs, cocaine, heroin, whatever. It would be like 100 times worse than what it is now in those same countries. Same way in America. It would be 100 times worse of what we're dealing with today than what it would have been if those same people didn't stand up and be recognized for what that they was trying to achieve. God bless this man, and God bless his family, and I just pray that his movement will in fact be 1,000 million times stronger now since he's dead and gone and put to rest than what he ever thought about during his life.
Europeans, what are you debating? The crime must be punished. And as of today, Putin believes that.
Do you think it will ever be known exactly how he died?
Probably not.
Do we care? It's
murder is murder.
The moment they moved him from a colony in actual Siberia into the colony beyond Arctic Circle.
That was his death sentence.
Conditions, emaciated.
That was his death sentence. Whenever they moved him from that one prison, that was basically his death sentence. Now, they didn't just come out and just put him in a wheelchair or hang him from a tree or put him in an electric chair or whatever. But that was basically his death sentence because they knew that his body had already been beat up on and he had went through so much trauma in so many other different events, being poisoned and whatever, that they knew that he wasn't going to be able to withstand that type of torture in that type of environment.
A prisoner who spent hundreds and hundreds of days in solitary confinement. That was already just a clear message. Exactly. So then it was a matter of time. But again, they did it in purpose just at the opening ceremony of Munich Security Conference. Tell me what else? Again, it's happened God knows where. They could have sit on this news for a few days and then release it. No. They just wanted to make it so publicly. And again, waiting for the response. By the way, hundreds of thousands of political prisoners in the world now, they are in danger because they saw what Putin did. And Putin believes he's a kind of, this is a spiritual leader of all the gang.
Putin was saying, nanny, nanny, boo, boo. See what happens if you stand up against me. Nanny, nanny, boo, boo. This is what's going to occur if you stand up against our parliament and against our government. That's the reason why they made it so known. If the truth be known, they probably knew within a matter of probably had preconceived within a matter of hours, if not minutes, of just exactly when the man was going to kick the bucket and die. Which to me tells me that he probably was poisoned. That's just my opinion about it. Ain't going to be no way of proving it.
There's terrorists, thugs, and dictators in the world. I killed my main political opponent, world fame. People mention Nelson Mandela, of course, or Martin Luther King. And what's happened to me? Nothing. Go ahead. Kill others.
Eric Sparks, good to have you here. Thank you. Coming up next, breaking news from the White House, where President Biden is now saying about hostage talks involving Israel and Hamas. Also, major development, the U.S. military will airdrop aid and other supplies into Gaza. Plus, the message for lawmakers on Capitol Hill from a soldier on the battlefield in Ukraine tonight.
We're going to let that be the end of this on this particular recording. And just want to say good luck to all of us as we're going through the stressful
in actually Siberia, into the colony beyond Arctic Circle, in winter, in his conditions, emaciated prisoner who spent hundreds.
Right there, look at him right there. You can tell by the frailty of his face. Don't even pay no attention to his haircut, but just the frailty of his body. You can tell that he's lost excessive amount of weight, which is once more another strong indication of a body that's been traumatized. Good luck to all of us. I can't emphasize upon that enough in these final last days of what various people are going to have to endure, just as the Bible teaches us that some will actually be thrown into prison and some will actually be put to death for standing up for their causes. I have been thrown into many prisons. I have been thrown into many mental institutions that, as far as I'm concerned, was actually worse than prisons in a lot of ways. I'm one of the few that can still talk about it, not braggingly, but I can still talk about it in the perspective that if it wasn't for God Almighty being on my side, protecting me, giving me the strength to endure these traumatizing events, if it wasn't for God that allowed for me to know how to react, how to respond every time that I had guns drawn on me, and I couldn't tell you the hundreds of guns that has been drawn on me since basically I stepped out into the eyes of the people. But I thank God that I can tell my story, and maybe I'm only telling nitbits, little bit here, a little bit there, whatever. I'm still getting my message out before my viewers, and it's going beyond the perimeters of Northwest Tennessee. It's now getting into the eyes of the ears of people all over the world, similar towards what this individual done, Alexia, in what that he has brought forth. And once more, looking at it from that perspective, thank God for social media. Thank God for AI. Thank God for these advanced gizmos and gadgets to where people can identify the horrors that other people are still having to go through, especially those that are fighting for true righteousness and justice. God bless America, and shalom.